Welcome to the special meeting of the Albion City Council, Thursday, March 22nd, 2018. If you have an electronic device or a phone, I ask you to place it on silent. I call this meeting to order, and we will begin with a roll call.
Councilwoman Spicer?
Here.
Councilwoman Brown?
Here.
Councilwoman Barnes?
Here.
Councilman French?
Here.
Councilwoman Lawler?
Here.
Councilwoman Reed?
Here.
And Mayor Brown.
Here. At this time, we'll have public comment. Persons addressing the City Council should limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes. We ask that you observe proper decorum, and these are public comments on the agenda. Are there any? Is there any public comment on the agenda this evening? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to items for individual discussion. Item A, interim city manager candidate interviews. The council selected 2 finalists. Our public safety director, Scott Kipp, and Amy L. Robertson. We're going to interview them in this order. And, you know, we have about an hour here, so we're going to make sure we give them about 15 minutes each. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure, as we should do anyways, that all council members who want to ask questions have the chance to ask them before we go back to another council member. So if you would like to come forward, Scott Kipp, and I will open the floor up to questions from council. Councilmember French.
Chief Kipp, can you tell us about your employment history and professional qualifications, how your experience has prepared you to meet the challenges serving as the interim city manager for the city of Albion? And is there anything you would like to tell us about your qualifications?
I've been a resident of the city of Albion for over 20 years now. I've worked for Albion College for 5.5 years, and then I've worked for the city of Albion now for 18 years. I've served in many capacities here in the city of Albion in the Albion Public Safety Department. Currently, I've been Chief of Public Safety now for 6.5 years. I serve on the Planning Commission. I've been interim city manager in the past for 5 months. I work on a regular basis with the city manager, and I work diligently to learn what she does in her job because I feel it's important in order for me to do my job to understand all aspects of the city and what it does. So, additionally, when I was interim city manager, I did serve as the director of public services for a short period of time until we were able to replace that position as well. So, I have vast knowledge of the city of Albion's processes, not just public safety itself.
Thank you. Thank you. So, further questions from council? So, okay. Councilmember Barnes.
As far as organizational behavior and organizational culture, can you expound on your relationship with the administration and City Hall and the years that you've worked here?
Over the years that I've worked here, I feel I've had a great working relationship with all of the city staff and with council. I've worked closely with what Cheryl calls her A-team in planning and assisting with projects throughout the city. I have a great relationship with my employees. I also have a good working relationship with the employees in the other departments, including public services and City Hall.
So my question is, you have the unenviable position of having 7 bosses, right? Mm-hmm. If you were selected. And so one of the questions I'd like you to kind of talk about is, what would you anticipate your strategy being in terms of making sure that information is shared, I guess, freely among the council, and that kind of really the kind of the neutral role of the manager is preserved. Can you talk about that?
Well, as the interim city manager, I see it as my job just to keep the ship heading in the right direction while we're in the process of finding another manager. And to do that, I obviously have to be able to communicate with everyone that's on council. I'm passionate about what I do, and I work diligently to go in the direction that my boss is telling me to go. And so in this situation, it's slightly different because, like you said, there's 7 bosses. But the reality of that is there's 4 bosses. So whatever decision is made here at the council and whatever you agree to, that's the direction that we go. I see it no other way at this point. And as I said, my goal right now would be to keep that ship in the direction that it's going until we get a new captain on board who decides a different direction that we're going to go at the time.
Are there any other questions before I go back to Councilmember Spicer?
Thank you. Chief, how are you?
Good.
Can you please tell us what is your experience in the area of finance and budget preparations, as well as working with city staff?
Sure. As far as the budget goes, public safety has over 50% of the general fund budget. So I manage that budget every year. I've come in under budget, I believe, every single year that I've been the chief of public safety. Additionally, when I was the interim city manager, I handled that budget from April through early September, and that was getting to the point of budgeting for the next year as well. And that year, we also came in under budget. In particular, in the 6 years that I've been the chief of public safety, except for last year, I believe, we've given significant amounts back to the general fund balance at the end of the year. So it's not my goal to spend every cent that's given to me. It's my goal to use that money wisely and return what isn't needed to be used during that year. So I think I have a lot of experience when it comes to budgeting and managing budgets, especially our city budget. Does that answer everything? I think there's a little more to that maybe, but
well, the last part was just working with city staff.
yeah, I think I had just, like I've said before, I've had a great working relationship with all of city staff, and I don't think that will change.
Thank you. Councilmember French.
Can you tell us about your philosophy in dealing with the media? What is your philosophy in communicating with residents, whether it's directly or through other means?
When I became the chief of public safety, one of the first things that I did was try to reach out to the residents and keep them informed of things that were going on. I developed our department Facebook page. I've developed several other department Facebook pages that we have now, and that allows us to communicate on a regular basis to some of the community, but not all of the community, because you can't just you can't reach everybody through one medium. So I try to do what we can to get as much information out to the public about the things that we're doing, especially the positive things that go on a regular basis. We also developed the NIXL program, which allows us to send out emergency messages to the community, and that initially was for public safety, but now we use that for any emergency that comes along or information that we have to get out quickly to the community. So I think we've done a really good job of trying to be transparent in what we do in public safety in particular. And Dr. Mitchell has moved some of what I've been doing into what city does as a whole. And I've talked with her and discussed with her about doing even more with other city departments as well just recently, and kind of look forward to maybe being able to do that if I were to be selected for this position. As far as dealing with the media, I've been dealing with the media from the get-go, and I found the biggest thing is to get with them quickly, let them know what's going on, and don't try to block them out of things that are going on. There's no reason to do that. And so I think it's just important to be open, honest, and clear with what has happened, and let them investigate from there. So.
Thank you.
Are there further questions from the council? Okay. So I have an additional question. So one of the things that council's tasked with is kind of prioritizing the use of public funds for different projects. And so in the past year or more, the council's been asked to kind of expend money for matching, for matches for grants. And, concerns have been raised about the timing of that and I guess council getting enough time to review and make a well-informed decision.
Right.
If a situation like that does happen, like what strategies do you plan on using to make sure that council is not left making a decision at the 11th hour?
Well, I think it's important to try to get that information out to everybody and be aware of what's going on as quickly as you can. I know when we've applied for grants in the past, and to give an example of the fire truck grant that we got, we found out that that was due and put in for that within about a week's period of time. That stuff pops up on you, and they don't give you a lot of notification when these are going to happen. But I think if we're looking for certain things and moving in certain directions, that's not difficult to do, because we should be discussing this in advance and what grants that we're looking for and what we're trying to do. Major grants, usually you have a little more leeway on those things, but then again, you have other entities that are involved with grants and doing things that may not inform us of what's going on. But I think it's important that council knows as quickly as possible, because obviously you have to be able to do the research, you have to be able to get the information that you need to be able to get the right decision made for those type of funds.
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief Kip, what is the most pressing project, as you see it, for the city right now?
Because I haven't been involved in it for the most part and don't really know where it's going, but the governor's program that we have that's starting right now, I think is probably the most pressing, because it's something that's going to happen this year, and I think it's going to bring a lot of good things to the city of Albion. So that's one of the things that I think I need to get up to speed very quickly on, should I be selected for this position. The other biggest project that we have going that I think is extremely important is the water tower project, which is a large expenditure for something that needs to be done, and there's a lot of intricacies that go with that, as far as having to shut that tower down and be able to use the pumps, and if we have issues with pumps because they're going to be running more, there could be a lot of issues that come with that, and I think it's something that we need to stay on top of as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there further questions from council? I don't want to be the only one repeat questions here, but Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you. Can you please describe for us a major accomplishment that you were directly involved with in your current position or previous position, and the impact that that accomplishment had on the city?
I've already kind of mentioned it, but I go back to it every time, was the purchase of the tower ladder truck that we have for the city. That truck was a $1 million truck that cost the city $50,000. The fact that we were able to get that grant, put in for the grant, and actually get those funds to replace the truck that was in 1975 that had a rusted frame that we couldn't even use anymore. A lot of people question why we needed a truck of that size. But the first year that we had it, we used that truck more than we'd ever used any ladder truck before here. And a lot of people say, well, it's a 100-foot tower. You don't need to be able to reach 100 foot in the air. We don't have buildings that big. But it's not the distance up that we have to reach. It's the distance out that we have to reach. And we have so many buildings with so many people living in them, especially up at the college, where if they had a true fire and a true emergency, without that capabilities, it could be disastrous for us. So the fact that we were able to write a grant for $1 million and get a piece of equipment like that the city could never have afforded on its own for the low cost that it cost the city was just a huge accomplishment as far as I was concerned. And that happened with the first 2 years that I was chief. So that was a real learning experience for me, just buying a fire truck. So.
Okay. Thank you. So an additional question. So the city has department heads, so they're generally responsible for the work that's going on in the departments. But then there's kind of a, like I said, depending on how quickly the council completes a search, that could be anywhere, like you said, to 5 months, or hopefully a shorter period of time we can get that taken care of. But can you kind of discuss how you plan on staying on top of the projects? Is it going to be more of a just delegate and kind of leave it to department heads? Like, what can you kind of give some explanation of what your style is in terms of making sure that the work that's going to be left over after our manager departs is actually completed?
The good thing that I have going right now is there's very little in the way of major projects going on with public safety right now. I've got 2 officers that are just finishing up their field training, and I'll be fully staffed for the first time in I don't know how long, which will move us into the summer with the staffing to handle what we need to do, which we haven't been able to do for the last several years, which will free me up from that end of it. Additionally, Over the last 6 years, I've hired the majority of my department. I've promoted most of the people into the positions that they're in, and I've trained those people, so I'm confident in their skills and their abilities of what they're doing, and the day-to-day operations will take care of themselves because of where I've set the department up to be. So what really happens with public safety is we do our day-to-day thing that we do on a regular basis and just kind of stay in that direction until we get a new manager here that will tell me the direction he would like our department to go at that point. And then we can make those changes as we need. When it comes to handling the other parts of the city that have the major projects going on, I like to be involved in those projects as much as I can because part of it is a learning experience for me. I'm interested in doing these things. I'm interested maybe someday of becoming a city manager. So to do that, I need to learn all aspects of what we do here at City Hall. And so I'm not saying I want to leave public safety or I want to be a city manager, but maybe someday I will. And so it's interesting to me, and I want to be involved as much as I can in everything that's going on.
Are there any further questions from the council? We have, I said, like 15-minute limit here because of the time constraints. So we're basically at minute 13. So are there any further questions from council? Oh, Council Member French, then Brown.
Actually, Councilwoman Bryan, you've asked one question. Why don't you go ahead and
Thank you. I was just basically going to ask Chief Kip, is there anything you want us to know that you haven't had a chance to say thus far?
No, I think my experience and knowledge and what I've done for the city since I've been in charge speak for itself. I'm a hard worker. I put a lot of hours in. It's not a Monday through Friday 9-to-5 job for me, and so I wouldn't treat this position any differently than the position I currently have.
Thank you.
Councilmember French.
I waive my question. I think that was a fine way to end under the time constraints.
I have 30 seconds. I'll ask real quick. So the manager is also the administrator for, or helps with DDA and planning. Mm-hmm. So how are you going to take that over? Or do you plan on designating, let's say, for example, a DDA for coordination for that?
I worked with that last time that I did it. I didn't have a whole lot of in it because they don't meet that often. Mm-hmm. And so, again, I will assist in any way that I can assist the DDA, but I don't think I would be in any position at this point to be doing planning for them in a temporary basis that this position is. Okay. So,
thank you.
You're welcome.
15:03. We're going to take a. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Appreciate it.
Do you want me to leave or can I stay?
You know, I might have you leave just
okay,
out of fairness because she wasn't here. So, can someone? I'm just gonna brief.
Is somebody else?
If you'd like to, yeah. Take a brief recess here. Reset. So we are going to start. Okay, so we're giving each candidate 15 minutes, and council have the opportunity to ask questions. Everyone at least the first chance to ask a question, and then we'll go around. So I'm going to start. Are there any questions from council? Councilmember French.
Amy, thank you. Tell us about your employment history and professional qualifications. How have they prepared you to meet the challenges of serving as the interim city manager for the city of Albion? And is there anything you would like to tell us about your qualifications that you have already not shared with us?
Okay. So my name is Amy Robertson. I am currently employed by the Charitable Union located in Battle Creek. I'm assisting them with fundraising. I'm also an adjunct professor at KCC, teaching business management school. I continue to do that. And I left Albion 8 months ago as the CEO of the Albion Chamber and as the administrator of the Albion Homer United Way. My education is a bachelor's degree from James Madison College at Michigan State University, where I obtained a Justice, Morality, Constitutional Democracy, Political Theory degree. And then I completed my master's degree from Western Michigan University in Public Administration in 2001. In addition, I have been writing a book recently and nearly completing it. And I feel all of those things, my work history, my education, and my personal experiences are quite relevant to this position.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from council? Council members Spicer and Barnes. Council members.
Hi, Amy.
Hello.
Thank you for coming. Can you give us specifics with regard to your experience in the area of finance, budget preparations, and presentation, as well as working with municipal staff?
Okay. So I have experience in government accounting. I was the director of the St. Joe County Conservation District, which is a unit of government, so I am familiar with establishing budgets, doing reporting, and the auditing requirements of such a position. So these things are not outside anything that I've experienced before. And there was a second part of that question.
Area of finance, budget preparation and presentation, as well as working with municipal staff.
Okay, so municipal staff. I've had an awful lot of experience in that position down in St. Joe County, working with municipal staff, and that is applicable to this position.
Councilmember Barnes, Councilmember Brown.
Seeing that this is a transition period, this is just my turn. Coming in behind the 8 ball, not being familiar with some of the projects that are in process right now, such as the water tower, Superior Street, the governor's initiative, what's your plan of action and strategy to get caught up to speed to direct the city for the short term?
Okay, well, I'm totally familiar with the street project. As was mentioned before, long before, my husband works for Hoffman Brothers, so I am acutely aware of what's happening with the street project. And so I don't need any background on that. But, you know, I'm quite learned. I'm quite well-read. I'm a hard worker. I can bone up on whatever is needed in order to get up to speed. But I think the essential thing for this is that you understand, that I understand, the role of the interim. The role of the interim is to carry balls forward, make sure that everybody, that any waves that are splashing around right now are smoothed out, that the transition to the future full-time candidate is done well, and that all those balls are in the air, along with knowing what partnerships are out there that need to be facilitated, and then also understand the hierarchy of the organization and where I sit in that, all of which I certainly understand.
Thank you. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Mrs. Robertson, you spoke about St. Joe County. Could you tell us how long you were employed there?
I was employed by the Conservation District for 3.5 years and went through 3 audits.
Take a question. Okay. So you're in a position, or you're applying for a position that has a board of 7 individuals, so it's 7 different opinions, and the council, I guess, speaks as a body when 4 of those people agree. Can you discuss how you see yourself working with a council made up of different individuals and making sure that information is communicated freely? Can you talk about your kind of relation to boards?
Sure. I've sat on boards. I was an elected board member of the Kalamazoo Public Library, so I have familiarity with your positions and your responsibilities. I've also sat on a number of boards. My resume indicates the list. Interpreting information, disseminating it to you, working with you to make sure that you understand it, that you are as well informed as you can be as a person on this council is essentially this job. And so essentially I'll be working with you individually and as a unit to empower you with the information that you need in order to make the proper decisions.
Council member, are there any other council members who have questions? Councilmember French and then Councilmember Brown.
Can you tell us your philosophy in dealing with the media? What is your philosophy in communicating with residents, whether it's directly or through other means?
So as far as the media, I would be in a position to speak on behalf of this council in positions. Certainly my opinion doesn't pertain. And essentially any kind of communication that goes out to the media that would be put into print would need to be passed by this council. That only absolutely makes sense and is legally the correct thing to do. And as far as residents, speaking to them, again, when it's within the code enforcement, when it's within the laws that have been created, the other things that are out there that I can speak to factually, I will do so. If it's a situation where the nuance requires me to come back to you and explain it, then I will absolutely do that. This position must be in concert with the council.
Okay, thank you. Further questions from Councilmember Brown? Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Mrs. Robertson, what is the most pressing project, as you see it, facing the community of Albion right now?
Finding the permanent city manager.
Thank you.
So I have a question. So in the past year or so, we've had a number of instances where the council's been asked to distribute public funds that we're responsible for let's say, matches for grants. And one of the concerns has been the time frame, making sure that we're notified enough in advance that we have time to kind of consider and make a really sound decision. So, how do you see yourself, or what kinds of things do you see yourself being able to do? I know there are emergencies sometimes, but see yourself being able to do to alleviate the situation of 11th hour request from council?
Well, I'm sorry that I don't have all the facts to understand what you're asking, but I will conjecture that the council had to make decisions at the 11th hour without all of the facts. Is that correct? Or the manager made decisions at the 11th hour without permission?
No, the question, I guess I'll clarify. The question is,
thank you.
What types of things? So if you're either anticipating something like that happening, right? So you become aware of an opportunity and you have to plan a time frame to bring it to council. What kinds of things do you see yourself being able to do to make sure that council's informed? So it's not a situation where,
Okay, well, so first thing, good project management indicates that there shouldn't be any decisions made at the 11th hour. And I would call into question whether proper management of the projects were being conducted. If the lack of the funding coming in at the proper time happened, then midstream adjustments in projects occur, and so I guess what I'm trying to say is that one of the things I pride myself on is incredibly good project management, And there won't be situations where there are these 11th hours that you don't know about and that I'm not informing you well up into the day that all of this crisis would occur. That's just, you know, you can't chart everything. You know in advance, critical deadline is coming up. You're not getting what you need. You inform your bosses that that is happening and that there may be a situation. To me, it sounds as though things were left to rest until too late.
Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm asking each candidate the same question. My last question for you is, would you please describe a major accomplishment that you were directly involved in, and how, in your current position or in a previous position, and how that impacted the city/community?
Well, okay, I can talk to what I did before I left Albion. And that was that I held the 50th anniversary Festival of the Forks that was in 2000, that would have been 16. And we had over 8,000 people at the 2-day event. That was entirely managed by me. I raised all the funds. I signed all the contracts. I executed all of the negotiations and spatial information that occurred for that event. And this is all done at the Chamber of Commerce with a staff of 1, maybe 2 part-time, something like that. So detailed project management, knowing your budgets, adjusting for midstream issues that occur. These are all things that are right in my left pocket.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Brown and French. 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Mrs. Robinson, is there something that you'd like to say that you haven't been able to express to council through the questions we've asked before we wrap up?
I really do want to let you know that although it, to some degree, perhaps not, there was a bit of a mystery to me leaving. I didn't want to leave, and I would be incredibly happy to come back and roll up my sleeves for however long that I could give to Albion, and would just feel right back at home were I to be offered the job.
Councilmember, you have a question? Okay. Are there any further questions from council? Okay. I'll ask the question I asked as a final question. So the manager here, because of different funding issues, also administers, contributes to Planning Commission, and also with the DDA. Can you speak to your ability to handle that? So talk about Downtown Development Authority and
Sure.
then some planning.
Yeah, it's the same work. It's the same thing. It's being a mind on another body, making recommendations that are the recommendations of this council and this city. And as a representative with a certain amount of knowledge base to that entity, but I'm only acting at your behest and carrying those balls forward just like everything else.
Okay. Are there any other questions from council? Okay, seeing that. Thank you.
Okay, so what shall I do?
Okay. Yeah, so you're free to go.
Okay.
Yeah, and
All right.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, council. We actually stayed on time right there. So we will move on. It's a point of order.
I'm asking for a recess.
Normally I would do that, but we're trying to get out at 7, so I'm trying to respect
Okay,
that.
it's fine, I withdraw.
So we'll move on to appointment of interim city manager. And what we'll do is I'll entertain a motion, and then we'll go from there. Councilmember French.
I would move, given our interview and the data before us presented through resumes and letters of introduction, that we nominate Scott Kipp to be our interim city manager.
Support.
Moved and supported. Discussion. Is there discussion from council? Okay. So one of the things that I will say as part of this, I want to thank council for approving however truncated it was, a process for interviews. I think it's important that residents have a chance to see who's interested and look at multiple candidates. One of the things that I want to make sure, and this is kind of reflected in my questioning, is to make sure that two things happen, that we, going forward, we have a clear understanding about how communication's handled between either of the candidates where we're selected, and not have a siphoning off of information to make sure that council's fully aware. So that's something I'm going to push no matter who we select, and then also making sure that the momentum we have is not lost because, as was referenced earlier, I believe the last time this happened, there was like a 4 or 5 month period, and so we want to make sure that we're not going that long. That's all I have to say. If there's are there any other, if there are no questions, we're going to do a roll call vote, and then we'll go from there. So, are you going to do that?
Trying to do both, so,
Okay.
Councilwoman Spicer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilman Barnes.
Yes.
Councilwoman Reed,
Yes.
Councilwoman Lawler,
Yes.
Councilman French,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes. Okay. No clapping. Okay, that would violate the council rules. We'll move on to the transition process and protocol. So one of the things I want to make sure that we do, and maybe council, we can vote to authorize it. I want to make sure that there's an opportunity to sit down with the attorney, the outgoing manager, the interim manager that we have just selected, to make sure that projects are being completed. One of the things I'd like to see is to have a memo to council about all outstanding projects that are open right now. And then we also want to make sure that, I know there's kind of the logistical things about city equipment and those kinds of things. So I want to make sure that there's a kind of an exit process for that, and that, like I said, projects are documented, city property and everything is accounted for, and then we can begin. One of the other things I want to say too as well, I'll be sending out information to council to see if we can have a special meeting next week, because I really want to get a good start on selecting the process that we're going to use to select the next manager. So does council have any questions or concerns or anything in particular regarding how we're going to handle the transition here? I know Manager Mitchell mentioned days off. Do you know that?
The only thing that she's told me is that she's taking next Friday off.
Okay.
Other than that,
Okay.
I don't believe she's indicated that she's taking any other PTO.
Okay. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to make sure I'm clear, you're suggesting a meeting next week. I know at our Monday meeting, Councilmember French had asked for, on the future agenda item, to be that we consider MML, right? So what you're suggesting is that we meet prior to that meeting to address that question in the process moving forward.
Yes, because what I don't want to have a 4 and 5 month process. I know I've received comments from council members and then just other community members. So I want to make sure that we're being expedient in that process. And I know that we've used MML in the past. I know that interest has been expressed, from other consultants who, are capable of doing it. So I want to make sure we have that discussion as soon as possible. So I want to get that ball rolling. Councilmember French.
Since that seems to be part of the agenda for Monday's meeting, it would be my expectation that that discussion would happen at that meeting rather than having a separate meeting. And that's why we have discussion about anything on an agenda, so we could freely have a conversation. And if we decide that that this council doesn't wish to use MML or wishes to modify, they just reject that motion and or modify the motion to make that decision.
The point is to have us not delay it to April 2nd, because that would be the next regular council meeting.
Next week's.
Councilmember Reed and Attorney Harkness.
We don't have a meeting Monday night.
To my knowledge, no.
Okay. Because why can't we make that decision out? That's the week of Easter. There's a lot of practices and things going on. A lot of some people
On the 26th?
Why can't we make that decision about MML now?
Well,
I mean, I don't think it's, if we took a vote on whether or not we wanted to do that.
so this is a special meeting, so there's certain things, we can only just, I guess, vote on things that the meeting was called for. So we can't make that decision now.
So there was already a special meeting called for Monday.
No, there wasn't.
No. I'm discussing whether we should call one next week. 'Cause like I said, I want to make sure, like you mentioned on Monday's meeting, make sure that we get started the process as soon as possible. So, okay, Attorney Harkness.
I was just going to indicate to council, so I think the obvious thing in choosing an appointee tonight is that they're going to start the transition process almost immediately. The other thing that the council has to decide is compensation.
Yes.
And that needs to get set.
Yeah. So that would be another thing to discuss. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So basically, what I'm understanding is that you're proposing we meet next week. If we do not meet next week, then these items will be discussed April 2nd.
Yes.
No. Okay.
Well, actually, the Attorney Harkness made a good point. We have to discuss compensation.
That can't wait.
So it's a unique thing right now, because I know when we did, I think the last transition, I think the manager had left by the time we made that appointment. So there's a slight overlap. So the question becomes determining when we're going to have that start. If we want there to be some shadowing for next week or a couple of days. So, Councilmember French.
Monday night, 7 o'clock.
Before we sort of go down that road, I'm free Monday night, but no other night.
Okay.
So the question is, are other council members and you available Monday night to have a special meeting?
Yes.
I just checked my calendar, so I thought it was blacked out, but it's not.
So I'm going to do so would Monday night work for you?
Yes.
Would Monday work? Councilmember Barnes?
Yes, it does.
Does that work for you? Okay. Councilmember Reed?
Yes.
Lawler? And okay. So we're going to tentatively put special council meeting for the 26th of March to discuss compensation and then also the search. Councilmember Spicer?
Thank you. The time on the 26th?
7 o'clock.
Thank you.
Councilmember Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. So Monday we'll be discussing compensation,
And-
official start date, and moving forward with the process. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Are there any other, for the good of the order, in terms of transition process protocol that we'd like to, like I said, I just want to make sure that things are documented, and everything's accounted for. So everyone is here. We will move on to public comments. Persons addressing the City Council shall limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes. We ask for proper decorum. Are there any public comments in general this evening? Please state your name and address if you have any.
Tom Hunsdorfer, 803 South Superior Street. Just wanted to commend you for the good work you've done this evening, and I know both of the candidates you considered, and I'm particularly pleased with the selection of Chief Kipp. What I've seen over the last year, maybe a little longer, of his outreach to the community in the form of squirting water on kids in neighborhoods when it's really hot in the summer, but of the best form of community policing and community outreach, given the challenges that many cities and towns around the country have between public safety and neighborhood relationships. I just think that his commitment to our community and to all members of our community has been pretty remarkable in how he has taken the role of chief and really made it part of the neighborhoods and touched the lives of kids and got a lot of them wet on time when they needed. So good choice. Thank you.
Are there any further public comments this evening? Okay. Okay. Seeing none, I think that is
Motion to adjourn.
I'll say. Councilman Brown and actually Spicer supported. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say yes.
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 Okay, any opposed? Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. I don't know, yeah. I ran a pretty good meeting. We're out 10 minutes.
I was surprised.